Let's talk supply chain. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Let's Talk Supply Chain. Before we start, I have one question to get you thinking. Now, data is vital in helping organizations respond to customer requests, optimize, and help make intelligent business decisions. But what percentage of revenue hinges on having rapid access to compliance data? Well, that's a tough one. So let me know your guesses over on social. Keep listening, and I'll let you know at the end of the show. So today I am joined by Ascent. Ascent is the leader in supply chain sustainability management solutions, blending a SaaS technology platform with managed services and a world-class regulatory team of subject matter experts. Ascent is keeping customers ahead of compliance and regulatory changes across the globe. And it's Ryan, sustainability manager at Ascent, that is joining me for the show today. Now, Ryan has a long history of supporting manufacturers in their supply chain sustainability programs. And at Ascent, he leads a group of experts in product compliance. So he's bringing a lot of incredible expertise to our chat today. Now, Ryan and I are going to be talking all about Ascent, what they do, the complexities of PFAS management, which I'm going to have to ask Ryan about, and the ever-evolving regulatory landscape, understanding tackling the risks and the best ways to work with suppliers, leveraging product compliance as a competitive advantage. So welcome to the show, Ryan.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks for having me.
I'm excited to have you here because we're doing a deep dive into product compliance today. And compliance is really having its moment in the sun right now. Quite rightly. I mean, it's entering into more and more conversations when not really that long ago, it was more of an internal topic that didn't really cross over as much as it should have into a cross-functional megatrend. But that is happening now, and you have so much expertise in the area. So I can't wait to hear from you because it's something that I've been talking a lot more about as well. So let's start by learning a little bit about Ascent. Who are you? What do you do? How do you help your customers?
Yeah, well, thank you first and foremost for the lovely intro. And you've done a nice job of explaining what Ascent is already, but kind of to expand on it, we are a SaaS company with a software solution in its foundation. But we are a service company from the standpoint of we do have a program team that, our customer will get to lead you through the journey of compliance and sustainability on a daily, weekly, and yearly basis. And I'd be a little remiss too to not bring up the regulatory team that you mentioned that I'm part of. You have the opportunity to engage those regulatory experts with a partnership at Ascent as well. So, yep, a SaaS company with a flair of personal touch.
Amazing. I love that. And we're going to do a bit of a deep dive, learning a little bit more about that. So, as I said in the introduction, today we're taking a closer look at product compliance. And for me and the conversations I've been having over the last probably 6 to 9 months, compliance is one of the biggest topics right now. Like there's products that are being turned away at the border just because of it. And seemingly, ever-changing regulation is part of what's driving that. Now, we're going to be looking at product compliance specifically through the lens of PFAS, which is hitting the headlines as well. It's regulated differently, I think, state to state, and then differently again, even globally. So first of all, can you tell me what PFAS stands for? And then talk to us about the regulatory landscape and the challenges that it's just presenting for businesses right now.
Yeah, usually when we talk about PFAS, I like to go down to my level and say, if you think about Teflon and the nonstick pans, that's the PFAS coating that is helping that pan in its nonstick performance. But PFAS has all kinds of applications and it's incredibly useful. The unfortunate part is it's hazardous as well. So you are seeing just a flurry of activity in the US alone. The federal requirement, the reporting requirement is coming up. It's less than a year away for companies. But each state has got their own little flair and twist to the PFAS regulations as well. So when you look at the states, it's almost like they were becoming just frustrated with how slowly the federal government was moving on this topic. So they came up with their own twist and timelines to it. So companies are having to prepare for a federal reporting requirement in the US, and they're also having to keep a close eye on each state level. Now, from a global perspective, You throw in what happened just a week or two ago with Canada. Canada came to the table and inserted their own federal announcement and
No.
reporting. So, and Canada's is undercutting the U.S. federal timeline. You have 6 months to prepare for Canada's reporting requirements if you're in scope. So we talk to customers all the time about, not just the U.S. PFAS ramifications, but also at the global level. And we're also seeing very sizable numbers attending our webinars as companies try to rapidly catch up on the topic of PFAS. So there's all kinds of regs out there that we're all being consumed by, but this definitely has captured the headlines over the last year or two for sure.
I have to apologize because I said PFAS and you were like PFAS. I had no
Yeah,
idea.
that's all right.
But those are really tight timelines. I was recently talking to somebody on my Thoughts and Coffee episode about responsible sourcing and forced labor and all that kind of stuff. And there's regulatory compliance around that and some deadlines around that as well. So if we're talking about regulatory compliance on your side as well as that side, and all of these dates and things that we have to be prepared for and ready for. And Canada comes in and is like, you need to be ready in 6 months. I mean, I don't know. That's a lot to consider as a supply chain professional, supply chain leader, sort of looking into the rest of 2024, 2025, and what they have to have in the calendar and prepared for. So I'm assuming that they're feeling a little bit overwhelmed right now.
Yeah, it's and to wager a guess, most of your listeners, it's probably not their full-time job either,
Mhm,
right? They
exactly.
probably have a more traditional supply chain responsibility, and somebody came along with a hat and said, wear this too. And there are a lot of timelines. So selecting a good partner in that journey is very important. And having kind of regulatory experts in your back pocket and being able to help watch you and keep an eye on those timelines is huge.
Mhm.
So if it's not a third party relationship like Ascent, it's something even as signing up for free regulatory announcements so you can kind of have this little ping in your email every once in a while that reminds you of these dates. It's becoming extremely burdensome and complicated to keep up with for sure.
Well, yeah, it's a lot to contend with, right? And I think regulations are maybe just the tip of the iceberg. There are other drivers for organizations thinking about eliminating that PFAS. So, can you talk to us through that range of drivers, maybe how that complicates things for organizations who, like we've just been talking about, find themselves kind of struggling with multiple priorities?
Yeah, so when you look at PFAS, especially, so you're always going to have that regulatory driver that gets everybody into action. But with PFAS, for me, the number one concern from a risk to the business standpoint has been part obsolescence. So most of the folks that are engaging us are looking and craving for that data to start to make those decisions and identify where they have something like PFAS in their supply chain. A lot of times, however, they may forget that with PFAS, they need to be looking inside the four walls of their manufacturing facility as well. So
Oh.
you may be focusing on suppliers that you're purchasing for to build your product, but what about the machine that's building that product? They're
Hmm.
going to have gaskets and seals, two items that are very commonly containing PFAS. What happens if those seals by, say, I don't know, 3M? They're a big company. They've announced a very audacious goal of eliminating 22,000 items from their
Hmm.
SKU catalog, if you will. They're getting rid of all PFAS. And what if that's where you were sourcing those seals and gaskets from?
Right.
You may be completely blind to that risk. So while you're checking all the boxes and you're going through the motions of preparing for, say, a federal reporting requirement, you need to keep an eye on part obsolescence as well as a risk to the business. So it's very complicated. You're always going to have the reg pressure. You're always going to have the customer pressure. And now you have this unique little supply chain twist where you might not even realize that suppliers underneath you in the supply chain hierarchy are planning to eliminate a product that you really, really need. So there's all kinds of risks that you have to keep your eye on out there for sure.
That is so true, and probably something that a lot of supply chain professionals aren't really thinking about. A lot of times we're talking about forced labor when you're looking at tier one, tier two suppliers. But now, if we're thinking about maybe a shortage, right? If that supplier decides not to provide something that's manning and helping those machines run in a manufacturing facility, then what? right? What is your contingency plan? What are you going to
Right.
do? How are you going to fill that void if a line goes down? And a line going down for a lot of organizations mean a lot of money.
Yeah, it gets expensive quick. And a lot of times, you're not really focusing on those types of suppliers. So you have one and you
Mhm.
haven't really taken the time to identify a backup. Or if it's product related, you may have suppliers that are single source from a strategic perspective. Maybe they're building you a custom part that you need, and that's the only person you're getting it from.
Right.
That creates a real risk when something like PFAS pops up for sure.
Well, and also, like, whose responsibility is it? And who's asking the question, right? Because each party that's asking a question around that wants to understand a different part of it. Is it your CFO that's asking the question, right? Is it your manufacturing facility? Is it your supplier? Right? Are you working with your supplier to hopefully fill in those gaps where that could be? And so all of this could be really incredibly complex. And you've just talked to us a little bit about the tangible risks to a company. But if we think about it, where do we start? I mean, we're talking about all these sort of balls in the air. And if I'm a supply chain professional sort of listening to this or a supply chain leader going, I have to look down to like the part of a machine in a manufacturing facility. Where do I even start having the conversations, asking the right questions, taking a look under the hood to see where we are at risk and having to make a change?
Yeah, well, every company is going to have a different risk profile and a different risk appetite, but it all starts with data. No matter what that risk appetite is, you have to have the right data to be able to make strategic decisions on where you need to
Mm.
go next. And without data, you're making blind choices. So the important piece is identify the regs that are applicable to you. Maybe it's a CEO telling you it's a topic like ESG that we need to focus on. Maybe it's a customer driving down their expectations, or maybe it's the federal government saying we need you to report and you're in scope.
Mhm.
Regardless of the driver, you need data to make those decisions for absolute. It's an absolute, or you're going to be kind of stuck in the mud real quick if you don't have any data to make those
Well, and you have
choices.
to have good data, right? Like there's a
Right.
big difference between good data and bad data. And you want to make sure that you're having that good data so that you can make those decisions. And so you got to really make sure that your data house is in order. And I've been talking about this for years. So if people don't have their data houses in order, I'm not entirely sure what they're doing.
Right. So, and really, it kind of comes back to the theme of the relationship that you have with a supplier,
Mm.
and how you navigate that conversation. Are you kind of one that's, pushing down demands, or are you having a collaborative conversation with those suppliers? My guess is the more and more you push down demands, the more risk you have of getting questionable data coming back because they're
Mm.
not responding to what you really need. They're responding to your perceived sense of urgency, and they're scrambling. So the relationship there with your supplier is very pivotal in getting high quality data.
That is such a good point. And we all have a choice when we're working with partners. We have a choice of how we're going to interact and whether if it's going to be collaborative or one-sided. We might think that it's being collaborative, but maybe we need to drill down a little bit more in those conversations and make sure that they are feeling that from you so that you do at least can take that risk out of it. That one's an easy one to do. But one of the things that I said at the beginning of this was that you can use product compliance as a competitive advantage. Now, I like this because I've been talking about using how companies can use supply chain as a competitive advantage, and you're drilling down even more on that and saying product compliance programs can provide that. So, how can organizations use a product compliance program as a profit opportunity? Where is that competitive advantage they can take advantage of?
Yeah, once you get to a state where you have high quality data from a large set of your suppliers, you're now in a position to make that some competitive choices. You can make competitive choices in how you design your products because you have that data, so you're being more predictive from a
Right.
regulatory landscape. But really, you're starting to showcase the level of supply chain partner you are up to your customers.
Hmm.
So what you expect from your suppliers and you're collaborating with them, you're really using that information and those relationships to foster a stickier relationship with your customers. And when it's no longer about price, if there's five companies in the room bidding for company Z's attention and price is all similar, where are you going to get that competitive advantage? Well, you can get it from product compliance and sustainability efforts, being able to show that you are proactive and whatever question they come at, whether it's PFAS or ESG or conflict minerals, you name it, you're ready. And you already have the data to be prepared to support their organization and their goals as well.
That is such a great point. I mean, no longer can you sit there and just wait for that question to come and then deal with it. It's
Mhm.
like we definitely need to be proactive in understanding what it is that we know about our supply chains, our manufacturers, et cetera, our
Mhm.
suppliers and all of that. So I think a huge part of realizing that opportunity, and you kind of mentioned that before, is suppliers. I mean, so many companies' sustainability and compliance efforts are really only as good as the supplier's efforts, which you kind of alluded to before. But that's not an easy fix. There's a bit of a balance, right? It's not just a case of making demands, like you said. So let's go back and just sort of talk a little bit about how organizations can treat their suppliers, how they can come to the table in a collaborative way and nurture those partnerships so that they can get the best results. Like, do you have some advice to anybody in that position right now?
Yeah, I do. And I'm sure all of your listeners have been in the situation where they've had a customer just hammering away at them for whatever
Mhm.
regulation is hot that particular moment. I've had my experiences earlier in my career in the manufacturing setting. It was conflict minerals. It was the drive towards
Mm.
getting all the high risk smelters removed from the conflict mineral report that I was sending to them. And the interesting piece with that is conflict minerals is happening right now at a calendar basis, and it's a look back. It's gathering information on the stuff you've already bought. So to
Yeah.
have a customer come and demand to remove something, it's like that purchase already happened. It's like the conversation should look forward with your suppliers. We recognize that you have this high risk smelter. What are you doing going forward to ensure that you're taking steps to remove that risk from our supply chain? So it's collaborative in spirit, it's forward thinking in terms of, instead of going back and harping on them, let's work together going forward. Tell me what you're doing to improve your programs and helping them along those journeys. And I know the listeners are all going, my God, Ryan, I have thousands of suppliers.
Yeah.
How can I ever do that with all of these suppliers? Right. So
Mhm.
it's again, that circles back to the risk appetite of each individual company. I'm sure most, if not all, listening have a subset of suppliers of those thousands that are strategic in nature or preferred in nature. Start there. Start with the conversations with those types of suppliers and start to be more proactive instead of a reactive kind of gripe every year and really kind of scolding them, if you will.
Yeah. Well, and I think knowing that they have that many suppliers that they go through is, or that they work with, can be a really daunting task when you think about collaborating with each one of them, creating a win-win relationship with each one of them, creating that transparency that really you need from a reporting perspective in a variety of different ways. I mean, we've talked about product compliance, forced labor, the conflict minerals you were talking about as well. What's involved in that? Can technology help? Is there a way that we should be thinking about change management or offering support? Like, what can that look like so that we can create that win-win scenario across all of those relationships if we're thinking like, hundreds and thousands?
Yeah, when you look at thousands of suppliers, clearly technology is going to be a very important piece to help push and pull data and help organize data in a usable form. So you can help, make your organization better and make better decisions holistically. But, with the supplier and the relationship, it starts with setting clear expectations. Do your
Mhm.
suppliers fully understand what you expect of them? Do they understand and appreciate why you expect that of them? If you're picking somebody like Ascent, did you tell them you picked somebody like Ascent, or is Ascent just reaching out to them and saying, "Hey, we're Ascent. We're here to get this data"? So you have to be very clear clear with them and help them understand why it's important and why you're asking in the first place.
Mhm.
And then you need to showcase some flexibility. Not everything is going to be a 12 o'clock fire. So handle it from I always go back, make risk-based decisions, but also make the right decisions in terms of what you expect from your suppliers in a timeline. If you come to me for conflict minerals and you tell me I have to remove a smelter and I have 2 weeks to do it, or else I go,
Mm.
I'm 16 layers removed from where that smelter was actually first reported. What am I going to accomplish in 2 weeks? Right. So
Right.
be clear, be fair, be proactive, and help them see why it's important and why it's important that they collaborate with you. And don't be the parent that says it's because I said so. Like that's
Oh,
gonna get you nowhere, right?
that's gonna go out the window. Are we still using that in 2024? I really
I
hope
hope
not.
not. I hope not.
But it also goes back to responsibility. I think mapping out the responsibility and who's kind of responsible for what. Now, if you're on a different continent than your supplier, letting them know about the rules and the regulations that you have to live up to on your side, well in advance and highly mapped out of what exactly it is that you need from them. So you talk about expectations, but there's also that role of responsibility, right? And as long as each party knows who is responsible for what and where that information is going to come from. Because if your supplier is on a different continent and you have all these federal regulations, like we talked about, that are coming up with these due dates, like you said, you don't want to tell them 2 weeks ahead of time. You want to let them know as soon as you know, and you want to let them know exactly what you need to pass that and how they can support you in doing that, right?
Yeah, and I would even add to the fact that you need to tell them in multiple ways.
Okay.
So it's really common from, some of the experiences I had where a customer executive or an account executive reaches out to me in my past professional life and says, "Hey, we have to get this over to the customer. Where was that communicated?" And they're like, "Well, here's the contract." It's like, "Oh, that would have been good for me to see a year ago when we signed that contract." So telling the supplier and giving them multiple opportunities to see that expectation is very important, whether it's in a contract and then flow down through terms and conditions, or even to the standpoint of, remember, we talk about, preferred supplier status or vendor program. I'd be willing to bet there's also a scorecard program,
Mhm.
typically driven by the supply chain or quality organizations within a company. As a product compliance and sustainability professional, the first thing I would do would be reach out to those organizations internally and say, I need to get some product compliance and sustainability items added to that scorecard process
Mm.
so we can start to clearly define the expectations and we can be clear with our supplier of how they're being measured to success. So it's contractually, it's at the time of purchase, and it's in their review scorecard process. They have multiple ways to see that this is important to my organization, and we need some data back from you in regards to these topics.
Well, and that brings up a really good point because a lot of what we've talked about is external suppliers, but obviously you've got internal collaboration as well, and setting the expectations amongst all the stakeholders that touch each part of a shipment, let's say, or a product. They also need to understand the expectations, and you all have to be on the same page of what you need to be able to get something across the border, because or the border, I mean through the ports or across the border or things like that. Because you could have somebody in sales, they've sold this to the customer, they need to get it here now. They don't understand the ramifications if they have not gone through the product compliance or they haven't been part of that process. And so you have to bring everybody in and have that internal collaboration so you're all on the same page as to what is needed so that your supply chains can run smoothly.
Correct. Yeah. Could you imagine going back to the supply chain folks and saying, "Hey, you're going to have a problem with this supplier. Their part is not compliant. We won't be able to use it," and find out that that's the only one that they had? Like, well, they're single source, Ryan. Well, I don't know what to tell you. We can't get that through. We're stuck.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it's important internally to be on the same page, and then you really start to see the ramifications strategically when product compliance and sustainability is in sync with supply chain group. you start to see these conversations happening going, oh my gosh, we have a business risk here that we didn't even know we had because we only have one supplier and it's in that region. We were looking at a standpoint of, yep, it performs the way we need it to perform and it's at the price we need it to be at to purchase this part. We had no idea that that region was going to be a dangerous region for this particular topic. And now we have a risk of not being able to source that part. So whether it's human rights, creating a supply chain shortage, whether it's other things that happen in the world that create supply chain shortages, the conversations that happen internally between, a regulatory minded person and a supply chain person are important to be predictable when it comes to seeing the true business risk that's out there for the company.
Yeah, and let's talk about price because budgets are top of mind, right? Understandably, and quite often we're seeing organizations put prices up for customers, but they're still wanting to pay their suppliers less in order to boost the bottom lines. But we can't really have all of these demands or even collaborative demands on suppliers while we pay less, right? How do we motivate them in a way that works for everybody? Because again, this is another question of who's asking the question, right? CFO, procurement, right? They're all going to want to see different results based on what we're paying our suppliers. But then you've got compliance who are like, well, they've got to put in a lot more work for us to be able to hit these regulatory requirements within the time frame that we need to hit it in. And if we don't do that, we're going to lose customers. Right. So there's a lot of variation when we think about bottom line and cost and pricing that we have to consider when we're talking to suppliers and hammering them to pay them less and demand more.
Yeah, there's a lot of push and pull opportunity there. Just internally alone, when you look at, compliance programs and where a company like Ascent can step in from a partnership standpoint and help that process, you can have lots of efficiency gains. So maybe it frees up some capital to reward in different ways and be creative with your suppliers in terms of price points. But there's lots of opportunities internally to clean up your own processes to make them more robust and more, I would say, cost aware. And but you have to be disciplined when you have those savings to roll it to the right spot. And rolling it to some strategic relationships, to suppliers would be a good use, in my opinion, if I can reduce the cost of a process in compliance by, X. Please let me use X to go reward some of these suppliers that have been doing a fantastic job that is freeing us up to be more competitive in our customer relationships. So you have to look at it really holistically. The other piece of the puzzle, we talked a little, earlier about scorecards and that process and preferred suppliers or strategic suppliers. A lot of times there are price cuts provided in there related to performance of the scorecard. So you do have a little stall time, if you will, if you just engage and get that compliance piece in there to begin with. And then you say, it's actually going to impact your ability here now better. You can get a better score now, and you can be exposed to kind of cost savings that the company already had in place for the suppliers. And then as you kind of mature, you can kind of define how you can continue to take that next step and being not only a collaborative partner with your supplier, but God forbid, a financial partner with your supplier.
Well, and that's kind of the name of the game too, right? There's also payment terms to think about and
Yeah.
all sorts of ways that you can collaborate on that by reducing the payment terms or maybe increasing them if you need to, but paying maybe a little bit more to be able to do that. And we kind of forget that that's part of the negotiation. That's part of that push and pull that you were talking about with a supplier. But could you imagine, right? They're doing a great job for you and you go to them and you're like, we're going to give you a little bit more budget. We're going to increase some of that pricing. We understand that these regulatory requirements are coming through. We need your help in doing that. We recognize that you've been treating us really well, but also it puts you at the top, right? You become this preferred customer to them. And it just makes the environment more of a win-win for everybody. So let's get into a case study or maybe an example to pull all of this together for us and maybe demonstrate the power of using a product compliance program as a profit opportunity, as a competitive advantage, and really working with suppliers to help you get there. Can you share something with us?
I can, yeah, absolutely. So you can go out to ascent.com and see some of these case studies and see the companies that are involved. For purposes of this platform, I probably won't say the company's name, but we work with this company's chemical compliance team, and that's who engaged Ascent for a partnership. And their goal was around things like PFAS. We really need better data to start making some decisions and start to kind of uncover where our risks are from an organization standpoint. So they really took the crawl, walk, run approach. And as they matured over the last couple of years and the suppliers have kind of come with them on that journey, they're now in a position where they use that data that they gathered through our software platform and they're taking it back to their engineering teams. So they're going to the very front at the design
Wow.
level and they're starting to make not just, how they want to design the product to be more sustainable, but they're designing in those suppliers that they have those preferred and cooperative relationships with to make it better at the end of the line. So they've used that to become much more streamlined and competitive from a supplier management standpoint and also a product design standpoint. They also go on in that case study to talk about the increased pressures that they continue to feel from customers, increasing the importance of buying from companies with proven sustainability programs. So we talked about it earlier, where this company has seen it firsthand in a bidding war. They've been able to go, but you also know that you're buying from this sustainable company
Right.
that is at this level with product compliance and sustainability. And they were able to use that to their competitive advantage as well. So
Wow.
but that all stems again from circling all the way back to you have to have high quality and data, and you have to and to get that you need good technology and sound relationships with your suppliers. That is the foundation of how this company made that happen. It is certainly by no means where everybody is at Ascent. We have lots of customers who are definitely in the crawl stage, and they're coming to us with a whole bunch of supplier information and saying, we need help. We got plenty of those, but it is really fun to see those customers mature from year to year and get
Yeah.
to a point where this cost us X 4 years ago, and now this is actually making us money.
And making us money. Now, I'm sure everybody listening to this wants to hear that. So your inbox is going to be full, Ryan.
Yeah.
So I think you're talking more about this at your Evolve conference later in the year. Tell us about it. What can people expect? What else are you going to be talking about? And how can people find out more about attending?
Yeah. So first, best way to learn more about the Evolve conference in Nashville in October is go to ascent.com/evolve to register. And Sarah, for your audience, we've set up a special code. It's Let's Talk 20. They enter in Let's Talk 20 and they'll get a 20% discount on all of their tickets. And really at this conference, they're going to have the opportunity to learn from a lot of leading experts, both internal to Ascent. Our regulatory team will be there. You can chat with them, but we're also going to have a lot of external partnerships that we have and professional friends that are coming to speak at our conference as well. It's an impressive lineup of industry analysts, business leaders. They'll cover topics like improving your company's compliance and sustainability programs. They'll talk about supplier engagement. They'll talk about validation with your data and all kinds of topics. And then, beyond the main stage, so to speak, where you're kind of in a listen mode at a conference, we also have breakaway sessions that are workshops. So you're going to be not just listening, you're going to be doing. I will be leading one of those on regulatory risk. We'll have some on building a playbook. We'll help you develop your business case to go back to your executives to get money to buy Ascent, right? But kidding aside, there'll be all kinds of workshops that you can attend that you're going to be working through some scenarios that we put in front of you with your peers that are there. So you're going to get to hear what your peers are doing in this space too. So exciting opportunity. I'm looking forward to being there as a presenter and a collaborator. And I hope we see a lot of your folks attend too.
And you get to meet Ryan in person, and all the questions that you've been writing furiously during this conversation, you can take with you to Evolve and ask Ryan in person. Now, product compliance regulations are evolving more quickly than many companies can manage. And as new regulations continue to be released and existing regulations amended, businesses need access to digital tools to gain clarity over their regulatory obligations, mitigate risk, and manage the complexities of supplier relationships. That is why brands need Ascent. Tailored to meet these specific business needs, Ascent is your trusted partner in achieving deep supply chain sustainability. And again, you can meet with them at Evolve in person or virtually October 9th through the 10th. And they are offering a discount to all of our listeners for tickets at the Evolve conference. Use the promo code Let's Talk 20 to save 20% off the ticket price. And now, did you have a guess at today's big question? Well, at the top of the show, I asked you, data is vital in helping organizations respond to customer requests, optimize, and make intelligent business decisions. But what percentage of revenue hinges on having rapid access to compliance data? Well, it's at least 60%. Now, that's even more proof that you really need to get on top of your compliance landscape. If you would like to find out more, you can check them out at ascent.com. And if you would like to hear more from us at Let's Talk Supply Chain, head over to letstalksupplychain.com. We'll be back next week, and I'll be joined by Larry Cuddy from Linksys. Ryan, thank you so much for joining me here today on Let's Talk Supply Chain and sharing all of your insights on supply chain sustainability.
That was my pleasure. Thank you.